Hello, everybody, and welcome into Tunnel Vision, a show presented to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Jack Smith, joined in studio by Ryan Abraham and Connor Morrissette, and we're here to recap USC's win in the Coliseum, 38-21 over Wisconsin. For the team's, guys, first Big Ten win as a new member of the conference. We do have one more special guest, though, that is joining us remotely. Want to welcome in USC safety Kamari Ramsey. Kamari, thank you so much for joining us on Tunnel Vision.
Thank you guys for having me.
So first off, before we get really detailed into the game, I thought you had a quote yesterday that kind of summed up the day. A resilient day for you guys where you come back and win, and you say post-game, sometimes you just have to nut up and make a play. And I know you had two of the biggest tackles in the game. Have you been able to go back and watch the highlights, one of the third down hit and the other one of the fourth down stop?
Yes, I have. I'm actually looked at it a couple of times. It's been on my feed a little bit, too. And my dad and my family members have been asking for the play too, so I just sent it out to them too.
We did get a pretty good video of your hit. I'd like to see if you're able to critique your tackling and explain this form a little bit, because it's a big hit as well as a pretty good form tackle. Let's see if you can see it.
So obviously just want to close speed, give the ball carrier as little space to move as possible, so once I was about to make contact, just making sure I got my head out the way. So there's no targeting and stuff, and just to be safe too. So and then just follow through, be violent with the hit.
Hey Kamari, appreciate you coming on again, and thanks to House of Victory for setting this up. But just for some of the USC fans who are around for the Pete Carroll era, 20 years ago, this is sort of like MO was maybe not play as well in the first half and then just be lights out in the second half. Last couple of games, it seems like the defense sort of followed that mantra there. Like, what has happened at halftime where you guys were able to shut teams down? The Michigan game, it was 3 straight 3-and-outs, a turnover, and another 3-and-out, and then pitching a shutout, and then getting a pick six, last night against Wisconsin.
I mean, obviously we want to start faster. The last two games we kind of dug our own holes for ourselves, but once you find yourself in that situation, you got to get up out of it. So. Just at halftime, just staying poised, no one panicking, no one arguing. We're down 11 points. Let's go out there. Let's compete really, and it's the game not over till it's double zeros on the clock. So that's the mindset we had, and we just stay together and stay poised. And we believe in our coaches. The coaches make great adjustments at halftime, and we just come out that second half with more energy and play lights out.
You mentioned the adjustments there, Kamari. So after the Michigan game, I don't know what that noise is. Sorry, people are hearing that. Danton Lynn talked about how that was the first time he really felt like he needed to make halftime adjustments, and I'm sure against Wisconsin he made some tweaks as well. What does that look like? I know Coach Lynn, he doesn't say a whole lot, but when he talks, everyone listens. When he's making halftime adjustments, what does that look like, and what did he tell you to do differently against Wisconsin?
Honestly, for both games, really the key adjustment was our energy. Like the first half, our energy was not good, and for both games, and we just had to increase the intensity and play faster and play more physical. That was the main thing. I mean, it was minor adjustments as far as what he was going to call, and what I like about our coaching staff is they own the stuff that the bad calls that they make too. So it's not like they're just putting everything on us, but most of the time it is on us because they're putting us in position to make plays. So that's the main thing, was just our intensity level coming out in that second half.
When you guys have to reevaluate the level of energy that you're putting out there and make a change at halftime, who in the locker room, whether it's a coach or a player, is really spearheading that effort to be more energetic in the second half?
It starts with Coach Riley. I mean, he talks to us before we break off into our defensive and offensive meetings at halftime. So it starts with him. He brings a lot to that as far as telling us that we got to pick this up and go out there and play harder. And then from there, you got Miller, you got Mill, you got Easton, you got Akili, you got Jacoby Lane. That just people like that just bringing the energy to the team and just telling us to bring it up and pick it up.
You mentioned Akili Arnold wasn't able to go yesterday. Wasn't last night, it was yesterday. I said last night the other time. Sorry about that. But against Wisconsin, he was sort of the green dot guy, getting the in-helmet communication. Did you end up picking that up, and how was that? How was the communication out there with Akili Arnold not on the field?
Oh, I mean, it was good. I mean, I had to green dot a couple times in spring, so it wasn't like a new situation for me. But he has had it for the start of the season. But with him going down and not playing, I had it for the Wisconsin game. and we still had good communication. And sometimes it like the green dot bugs out anyway too. So you got to be out there. You got to talk. You got to just talk with your teammates and make sure you look to the sideline, get the call and everything. So, but the communication was good though.
How'd you like it? How'd you like wearing the helmet there?
I mean, I like it, but like I said, sometimes it's like it bugs out, and it's like okay, I mean, it's back to just regular football, but it is different, but I do like it though, and it's good. I think it's good for the game too.
Kamari, now that you're in year 2 with D'Anton Lynn, is there anything that you feel more like free out there defensively? Anything that's coming easier to you? What is the difference between being in year 1 with Coach Lynn and year 2 now?
Year 2 is just allows me to play faster. I mean, even last year I was comfortable with the defense, and he makes it simple for us players to make calls. So I would just say I play a little faster than last year just because I'm comfortable with the calls. And once he gives me a call, I'm already thinking like, oh, if I get 2-by-2, I get this. If I get 3-by-1, I get this. Oh, this receiver in the backfield, I get this. So it's like it's not too much thinking. It's more so like I know the answer already for what check we need to go to, so it's just go out there and play.
Obviously, you knew the kind of effect that D'Anton Lynn could have being with him last year. I think USC fans were pretty optimistic, and I'm sure the players were pretty excited about the prospects of what he could do for the defense. Was there a moment, though, early on after he and you had come in that you saw everybody else around really see what this defense could be, and you're like, yeah, I know I played in it last year, and we can do the same thing here at USC?
I mean, every defense is different. There's weaknesses and the strengths to each defense, but I would say like just his scheme, it fits to the strengths of the players. Like he's gonna find the strengths of the players that he has, and he's gonna put them in a position to make plays. So I just knew that coming in to this team and to this program with him, and I just knew and I had that trust in him that he's gonna do that here too. So.
We talked to you preseason before everything got rolling, and you were one of the players that came over from UCLA. You had worked in D'Anton Lynn's system, and we talked to some other players where they were kind of relying on guys like you and John Humphreys because you've done it before. What's the feedback sort of been from some of the players that were on defense last year to now? And it seems like guys are pretty positive. Seems like the morale is really high for what's going on with the defense. But just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on how they've kind of embraced this new defense.
Honestly, I really think they like it. I mean, it's an NFL style defense, so it prepares you for the league, and it kind of it helps you learn like the terminology that the coaches in the league use. So you got like weak hook and you got bender, dig, dump, and stuff like that. It just prepares you for if you do make it to that next level, and it just prepares you and gives you a lot more knowledge of the game. So I think honestly the feedback has been great. I think they like it. I mean, we're playing fast, we're playing physical, so yeah, I honestly do think they like it though.
Kamari, it certainly caught us off guard. What was your reaction to Bear Alexander redshirting, and how have you seen the defense respond after he made that decision?
I mean, I was a little shocked, but I mean, you got to do what's best for you and your family. So I mean, we don't know what goes around behind closed door. So I mean, he has to do what's best for him, and I wish the best for him. But I mean, as far as how we respond and how the D-line respond, I mean, it's the next man up mentality. I mean, if someone goes down or if someone's not there, you got the next man up. You got to play hard and you got to play fast, and that's what they responded really well.
You guys got your first win in the new Big Ten Conference. You know, Jack mentioned that up at the top of the show. Really close to getting one on the road at Michigan with a crazy environment there. What was it like to kind of come off of that, disappointing loss and be able to have to turn around and play another, big time team in Wisconsin, just in 1 week later?
I mean, with the Big Ten, it's gonna be like that every week. You're gonna play good opponents each week. So after a loss like that, obviously you want to be on the other side of that. But we just bounce back mentality, and we're a resilient group, and we're gonna keep fighting. So I mean, we're not gonna let one loss define us, and one game define us. So we're gonna keep fighting, and even after a win, we're not gonna let that define us either. We're gonna keep pushing on to the next week, and that's the mentality we have.
Sorry, my mic cut out there for a second. One of the things that you guys were so good at last year at UCLA was playing defense on third downs and not allowing third down conversions for the other team. This year, it seems like that's been brought over to USC, and over at UCLA, they're struggling on third down. What makes Danton Lynn's scheme so good at stopping on third and also on fourth down for you guys?
It starts with success on first and second down, just keeping the offense behind the sticks, and then just staying aggressive. I mean, when you get to third down, you don't want to be passive. I mean, if you've been aggressive already on first and second down, why not just continue to be aggressive and just change up the looks, get a quarterback different looks. I know sometimes you give him a zero look, sometimes you give him a man look, sometimes you give him a zone look and play something different. I mean, really, the disguises help us a lot as far as making a coverage look like something else, but we're playing this. So that's really has helped us this year. And that's been like the key to our success, is just giving different looks and having early success on first and second down.
Kamari, number 6 on Wisconsin, Will Pauling, came into the game on Saturday as their top receiver. Had a great season last year. You guys limited him to his fewest catches of the year so far this season. What went into slowing him down, that talented slot receiver? How'd you get it done against him?
Just affect the quarterback. I mean, we knew the quarterback would be looking for him, so we're just going to have to try to affect him because he has to get the ball to him. So just try to affect him as much as possible and just play tight coverage.
As far as turnovers go, want to see the secondary. I know you guys want to get some picks, get some interceptions there. Is that something you guys kind of emphasize in practice? I mean, you want to get stops and get the ball back, but I'm sure there's a desire to go out there and get a big play like the Mason Cobb interception that was returned for a touchdown yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we gotta get somebody got to get a pick, man, for the DBs. Somebody got to get their hands on
Those
one.
linebackers are getting it. What about you guys? Come on, man.
Yeah, for sure. We gotta get one at some point. I mean, hopefully next game. But as long as we playing tight coverage and we're not allowing too many catches, I think that's all we can ask for. But yeah, we do got to create some turnovers in the back end as far as anything, forced fumbles, picks, anything really. But yeah, we're gonna have to get our hands on one for sure.
We mentioned that Akili was unable to play yesterday. You did have Bryson Shaw and Zion Branch lining up from you for more snaps than they have at any point during the year. What did those two guys show you across from you in the safety position?
Just that next man up mentality. They stay ready. They played really good too. Great communication. They were ready for the moment, and they played really good. And as I expected them to, because we had a good practice all week, and yeah, they stepped up and did their thing.
Kamari, we heard so much in the offseason about how Jacoby Lane was making these spectacular catches in the summer and during spring practice, and he has a real breakout game yesterday. What was it like for you to watch him, see how hard he works, finally capitalize on all that, and have a huge game? That must have been pretty fun based on everything he's done in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of expected Jacoby to have a good year for this, for us this year, and he's doing that. He made some crazy catches. I mean, I would say I was surprised by them catches, but I've seen a lot of those in practice too. So, that's nothing for him. He makes those type of catches all the time. So, yeah, he's going to continue to make plays for us, and yeah, he had a great game.
Talking about, I think Lincoln Riley was mentioning just being, tough quarterbacks and having a tough team, and seeing Miller Moss put that spin move on the, keeping it on the zone read and getting in for the touchdown, getting, banged up a little bit. What was the sideline like after seeing the quarterback kind of sacrifice himself and find a way to the end zone?
Yeah, we kind of erupted after that spin move. I mean, I've never seen him do no move like that before. So yeah, that was crazy. And then he dove into the end zone. I'm like, yeah. So I mean, when your quarterback is out there fighting for you like that, the team has no choice but to respond and fight for him too. So that was a great play, and I ain't never seen no juke move like that. But I guess sometimes when in a game, you allow your adrenaline and your instincts to take over. So, but yeah, it was a great move and a great play.
We've heard from a lot of guys, and I know Deuce Robinson has really preached it, that Miller is one of the best leaders that he's ever been around. I'm curious how you saw that pop up as an incoming transfer. What did he do as a leader to welcome in some of the new guys that came from around the country?
Just welcome people with open arms, and you could tell his leadership is natural. It comes easy. It's not like it's forced. He's a natural born leader. I mean, he's taking control of that leadership, being the QB1, and he's been a great leader, and he's going to continue to be a great leader for us.
Kamari, as I'm sure you know, the defense for USC struggled last season. It's been way better this year. How do you keep that going? What needs to happen to continue to put out these really good defensive displays? Because I feel like when you guys are rolling, USC will be in every game and have a chance to win every game.
Just continue to play with great effort, communication, just knowing our assignments and our alignments, and being physical and playing fast. I mean, those three things is that can help you play good against any opponent. And as long as we continue to do that, we'll be good.
You got your first Big Ten conference win, the first in program history, obviously, just joining the Big Ten this weekend, heading to Minneapolis, trying to get the first Big Ten road win. A lot of talk when, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington joined the Big Ten about the travel. I was a little shocked. I think my flight left around noon and didn't land till like 8 p.m. because of the 3-hour time difference. I didn't realize Detroit was that different. What was the travel like? Because you got another, fairly long trip coming up with Minneapolis, but how did that impact, preparing for the game and all that, having a little bit extra, longer flight traveling for the game?
Honestly, for me, it didn't really affect me at all. I mean, I'm asleep for most of the flight anyway. But yeah, it's just, I mean, you're only gonna be there for like a little bit too. Like you get off the plane, you do your meetings and your walkthroughs and stuff, and then you go to sleep, and then you wake up, and then once you wake up for that game day, your adrenaline's, or for me, the adrenaline's pumping, and I'm ready to play. So it doesn't really affect me at all.
Do you remember where you were and what your original reaction was when you were at UCLA and you found out that those two programs were heading to the Big Ten, and then later on when Oregon and Washington were going to join them as well?
I do not remember, honestly. I was probably shocked though, just because like I thought the Pac-12 was in the last couple years that the Pac-12 was intact. I think it was a very good conference, and I think you could put that conference up against anybody. But yeah, I think I was in shock though, just because I thought the Pac-12 was at a good time, and there was a lot of good teams winning and doing a lot of good things. But I mean, everything it's a business decision, so yeah, things happen. But I was for sure shocked.
You guys have already played Michigan, obviously, and made that trip. Is there another road trip or a place that you're excited to play, or maybe an opponent, whether it's at the Coliseum or on the road, from the Big Ten that you're really excited to get that first opportunity against?
You talk as far as like a road game?
Yeah, a road game, or potentially just one of those teams coming into the Coliseum. There's so many national brands in the Big Ten that maybe you grew up watching. Is there one specific matchup that excites you most?
No, I just think of like the environments. I mean, all the matchups are exciting just because it's a Big Ten. It's a great conference. You're gonna have great opponents every week. But like just the environments, like the Penn State environment or the Ohio State environments like those are just like playing in those, like, and making plays in those type of environments is just I think it's so real just because of the type of fans base that they have and stuff like that. So just playing in stadiums like that, I think, are very interesting and very fun to play in. But yeah, I think each opponent though is a great opponent. Most teams are physical, so yeah.
Kamari, I know you're so focused on USC this year, but you're getting a lot of NFL draft buzz. What does that mean to you?
I mean, it's a blessing. Just focusing on what I can control right now. But it is a blessing for people to say that I'm getting some NFL draft buzz, just because that's my dream to get there one day. So yeah, I mean, but just take it day by day. Just control what I control. Just keep working.
One last thing for you. We really appreciate you coming on and joining the show, and it's getting dark there where you are. So it's like a little bit of horror movie going on. But that's okay. That's good. I mean, I guess the sun goes down and the lighting and everything. But we did want to thank House of Victory again for setting it up. And when we put your single shot up, there was a code there. If you want to do for their latest campaign, you want to donate to player and to help players like Kamari go in there. But what's your experience been like with House of Victory, some of the events that you've done recently and working with charities and things like that?
It's been great. I mean, just helping the community. And I mean, it was a event where we had at the facility where we just had boys and girls from the Boys and Girls Club come out and just show them the facility and just talk to them and pick their brain a little bit and just spend time with them. I think that was probably one of the better events as far as like as long as I've been here, just because you get to interact with the kids. And I just remember myself being at that age and having so much energy and just looking up to people that were in my position, just seeing how big they were and stuff like that. So that was a great event, and it's been great to work with House of Victory just because of the things that they introduce you to, as the Boys and Girls Club, the feeding the homeless and helping out in the community. It just keeps you humble and keeps you like wanting to help others and just be open-minded to things like that.
Well, Kamari, we thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate you coming on to talk, and congratulations again on the win, and hopefully it's a good season going forward. Again, we really appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. Well, we're going to take a little break here on Tunnel Vision. We'll come back, Ryan, Connor, and I. We're going to recap the game and talk about it for a little bit and take your guys' questions and comments and then get out of here. We're going to take a little break, though. I'm going to put the QR code back on the screen if you want to donate to House of Victory. Again, thanks so much to Kamari Ramsey, and we'll be back in a little bit. Welcome back to Tunnel Vision, and again, a special thank you to Kamari Ramsey for joining the show and talking about USC's win against Wisconsin yesterday in the Coliseum. And guys, at halftime, it sure didn't look like USC was going to coast out to a win, certainly cover the 15.5-point spread, and Connor and I were thinking that picking Wisconsin for the spread was looking pretty good. USC turned that around in the second half.
It was not.
28 unanswered points for the Trojans, and they're able to really clutch up. They shut out Wisconsin in the second half, and we're here to break it down on Tunnel Vision. So, again, we thank Kamari Ramsey for coming on, but now we'll get back to our regular show. So if you want to leave a comment or a question about the game, about anything USC, we can put it up on the screen. We can take some live callers at the end as well, and if you want to call in, it's 5124-TUNNEL. Again, 5124
Actually,
tunnel.
no, we're not taking calls.
Not taking calls.
We're sorry about that. Yeah, we were having issues with the calls last time, so I got to fix that before we do it. But we wanted to get Ramsey on and all that, so there's a lot going on before.
If you have something you wanted to talk about in a call, just put it in a comment. We'll be able to put it on the screen.
Yes.
Fit it in the character limit, and we will talk about it at the end of the show. But as we kind of talked about the game a little bit with Kamari, and you think back to the Coliseum yesterday, what's the main thing that stands out to each of you guys about the game?
I mean, I was getting text messages at halftime from friends of mine that went to Wisconsin that were like, oh, at the game, like, hey, what's going on? I actually went down and met one of my buddies from college. He was a year after me at USC, but we came from the same hometown. And I hadn't seen him for years, so him and his wife came over, and we were chatting for a while. And it was like, you just didn't expect, I didn't expect USC to come out and play that poorly. It was probably their worst half of college football this season, and it's probably not close. So looking at that, it was like, okay, so we're just sort of like, are they going to figure it out or not? But I'm talking to my buddy and his wife and everything, and by the time I get back up to the press box, already missed the muff punt, and then it's sort of like USC got on a roll at that point. But I think looking at what the defense was doing, again, there was a couple big plays, but outside of that, everything was good. I mean, I think 2 of 10 or something on third down, 0 of 2 on fourth down, like really doing a nice job. Wisconsin averaged, I think, the same amount of yards per play as USC, like 5.7, but USC ran a lot more plays. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot again, but it's sort of the theme of USC kind of shooting itself in the foot. It didn't seem like this was something, I mean, that one 63-yard bomb was really nice. Like, that was really pretty. Hadn't seen much of stuff like that before. And one of my keys to the game was don't get more than 2 explosive plays. Wisconsin has not been an explosive play team, and they get 2 of them, in the first like 20 minutes of the game. But that was it. They kind of limited them after that, after those 2 big plays. And even the muff punt that turned into a touchdown, I mean, that was a sudden change, and I think the defense had a little momentum, and then USC just gives it right back to them and runs in for a touchdown. So I get it. Like, there's some people who are upset the way the team played, but it just still seems like just a few little things. But in general, like, if you had to grade them as how you played football, I think it's a good grade. I mean, the offense and stuff moving around, but there's still these like kind of mistakes. You can't have those special teams mistakes. They've been much better on special teams, pretty much outside of the punt return. And some of the other things, just moving the ball and, Miller Moss taking it off and running a couple of times. I like to see that. But in general, I think it's still a positive thing. I didn't think Wisconsin was that good. USC sort of kind of kept them in the game. And we'll see. I mean, they almost beat Michigan playing almost the same way. So I think they can. You don't want to do this. You don't want to take a whole half off, but you don't want to take a half off and then try to come back and win the game. They've done it twice, blowout win once, and then near win on the other time. But you'd much rather play at least like 3 quarters of the game. We'll see if they can. But I think there were still a lot more positives out of that one, even though people were pretty down at halftime, down 21-10.
What was surprising to me is, of course, there are going to be ups and downs, but based on the first 3 games of the season, I felt like if USC was going to lose, it was going to be another team just out executing them, and I felt like in the first half, USC beat themselves a little bit, which I didn't expect to see just based on how those first 3 games went. I mean, the Zachariah Branch muff punt, Jacoby Covington falling for a double move by a receiver on Wisconsin who really hadn't had a ton of success coming into the season. Elijah Page, who has had some issues, as we saw against Michigan, but he just gets beat straight up on a delayed blitz. That to me sort of seemed like all 3 of those things like areas where USC just should have done a better job. And yes, Wisconsin executed and they did well, but those are 3 plays where USC just could have done a better job. So to see them turn it around in the second half and get back to doing what USC has done so consistently this season, play good defense and not make mistakes on the offensive side of the ball, that was really encouraging. And Jack, we talked about it on Instant. I feel pretty similarly to how I did before the game. If your offensive line plays good enough to win, they don't have to be perfect, and they weren't against Wisconsin. There's still certainly some issues there, but if they give Miller Moss enough time, and certainly in pass protection, Moss had a hell of a lot more time than he did against Michigan. USC, with that defense and with all the stars on offense that they have a chance to win a lot of games. So the second half sort of played out the way I expected. I know 28-0, maybe I didn't expect that, but that was sort of what I expected to see against Wisconsin, and that ended up happening. So just got to avoid the slow starts and don't beat themselves. I still feel like that's one half where against Michigan, it wasn't USC beating themselves. Michigan's defensive line was just way better than USC's offensive line. So sometimes you just got to throw your hands up and say, okay, well, nothing you can do about that. But against Wisconsin, I felt like it was USC sort of beating themselves, and that was discouraging, but they certainly made up for it, and I still feel pretty good about the team for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking to see how undisciplined that they played in that first half. There were mistakes, there were false start penalties. It was just a pretty poor half in general. But I think one thing that we've learned through the first 4 games for USC, I'm not sure there's a game on the schedule, and maybe there's only one, where they don't have the coaching advantage. And I think we've noticed that specifically in the halftime adjustments that have been made because USC is just dominating teams in the second half. They did so against Michigan and couldn't come out with the win, but this is, again, another week where they come out of the halftime break, seems like a new team, they have the adjustments made that the other team hasn't been able to figure out, and they outscore Wisconsin 28-0 in the second half. Can you guys remember a time, and Ryan, I'm probably asking you more of this question, where you've been this confident in the USC coaching staff to go into halftime and make the necessary adjustments to be able to pull off a win like that where it could have been an upset at home, and it probably would have been in the last couple of regimes?
Yeah, I think you wouldn't have seen it in the last couple of years, but like I mentioned to Kamari, going back to the Pete Carroll era, like, those seasons that a lot of times USC came out and would be losing at halftime, and you think they're the way better team. They would get a bunch of penalties, maybe give up a special teams touchdown or something, and then a lot of times blow them out in the second half. So it was kind of a very similar vibe. I think our friends over at Raina Troy were talking about some of those games, like the Arizona State game. I think Matt Leinart got hurt in that one, and Castle came in, and he came back in the second half. I have to go back and look. But there was a lot of games that were like that where USC just sort of was like, putzing around. I think even the Fresno State game, the crazy Reggie Bush one where he had like almost 500 yards, that was just sort of like USC's MO. But then after halftime, it was like, all right, we're going to turn things on. And that was obviously a really well-coached team. They had a ton of talent, and they still started slow a lot of the time. So I wouldn't get too discouraged by that. I think it's something that you definitely want to learn from. I don't think you can give up those kind of plays on special teams. This was the worst special teams game for USC just in general, just because having, starting at the 1, starting at the 3, giving Wisconsin the ball at the 18. Like, you can't have the first 3 punts end that way, But USC was familiar with the punter. I mean, he was committed to USC and thought he was going to play there. He did a really nice job. But USC's punted well and stuff, too. Not as good, I think, against Wisconsin. Didn't get as much on those. But I think in general, special teams has been better, but that's one area you have to get better on. We were saying, like, it's okay if you don't get big returns. You can't get backed up in your own or turn the ball over like that. So I think it's the Pete Carroll era kind of thing. That's what we saw, where you would sort of maybe have these slow starts, but there was a confidence about that team that they could do it in the second half. It seems like this team has confidence. They're 3-1, so it's not like they were on a 34-game win streak or whatever like we saw with that era. But there does seem to be a confidence about this team that they can okay, we'll get it together, we'll score some points. We'll get it together, and we're going to make some stops. And they've been able to do that the last couple of weeks. Even the Michigan game, bouncing back from that pick six, that would derail a lot of teams. And so it showed a lot of, to me, it shows that the team has confidence that they can, any little sort of setback, that's not a little setback, it's a pretty big one, they can kind of overcome that and have the confidence that they can come out and pull it out.
I just wonder if that's sustainable because those Carroll teams just had a hell of a lot more talent.
They did, yeah.
This current USC team, not to say that this team isn't talented, but I do think there is a difference there. And if you have a first half like you did against Wisconsin, on the road against Minnesota, against Penn State, maybe even against a Rutgers team that's pretty well coached with Greg Schiano, Nebraska's looked a little bit better, Notre Dame, I think they need to play a much cleaner first half against some of those teams to win like we expect them to do. And Lincoln Riley's acknowledged that. It's not like they can go into all these games and not start off hot. So it's a concerning trend right now. It has only been 2 games. I do expect USC to address that and bounce back. But to your point, Ryan, those Carroll teams, they did that. But I don't know if this USC team can sustain that just based on their schedule and just based on the talent they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you trust that the coaching staff that's able to make these adjustments and outcoach teams going into the second half will find a way to get the team ready for the first quarter in one of these games. And you ask all the players, and they say it's an energy thing and that they need to be hyped up more for the first play, make the first play the most important one every time. You can say all of that, but in reality, you have to see it. And I do think we saw it against Utah State. I thought the Trojans came out roaring in that one, but that was the first home game. You're obviously juiced up at the beginning of the game for that one. I think USC going on the road this upcoming week at Minnesota, like this is a really good test to see if we know the coaching staff can make the halftime adjustments, but can they make the adjustments during this week in practice to ensure that they don't come out flat on the road at Minnesota? Because when you go on the road in the Big Ten in some of these environments, and I know Minnesota's not the biggest one, but you can't survive like that. And Minnesota was a team that started off pretty slow this week against Michigan, but then kind of hammered the Wolverines in the second half, and maybe were an onside kick, offsides call away from going down the field to win. So you can't take this week lightly either.
No, I agree with you there. And I think some of the, I asked Kamari Ramsey about some of the communication issues there, like losing the guy that had the green dot on his helmet, and Akili Arnold. I mean, that could have attributed for some of the slow start. There was a lot of drama around Bear Alexander not being, you expect him to be around. On Tuesday, he's, Lincoln Riley said there's not a story, and by Wednesday, he's not on the team. So there was a lot, there was a lot going on during that week also. And, just trying to bounce back and maybe a little bit of a hangover from, the loss at Michigan. So I think, you give them a pass and do it, but, you can't see them come out and play slow, especially on the road. Like when you're on a road, and some of these Big Ten teams, they want to just pound you. And, Michigan was able to do what they wanted for, 58 minutes of that game until USC took the lead. And then it was like, okay, now they had to do something different, and they end up responding. But you'd much rather put a team like that in a hole, knowing like, oh, crap, now USC's up on us. And USC let Michigan kind of do what it wanted for most of that game. And it was because of the slow start. They started to get momentum, and the best thing on what's on your side at the time at that point, because you only have, several, a few drives to kind of put things together. So start it from the beginning. And I think Minnesota showed that they can go into the big house, and they were a bad call on an onside kick away from potentially winning that game after a slow start, So I feel like this is one of those things you'd love to get a fast start going against the Golden Gophers and put up a lead and make them, kind of do some things that are a little more uncomfortable. But yeah, you don't want to see it. They've responded pretty well, though. I mean, to get the cover, I know you guys were, we do our picks against the spread, and someone in the chat said that my score was pretty close. Yeah, it didn't go. It got to the place I thought it was going to go to, but the route was a little bit different than we thought it was going to be. But we do have a little competition that we keep track of the spread and everything. So it was a pretty crazy cover for USC, the 15.5 points or whatever it was with that pick six. So a couple of the guys maybe weren't super happy with that pick six, but I was smiling in the press box when that happened.
Fans have been frustrated with Lincoln Riley's play calls, which I understand, but I do think the last 2 weeks show you the benefit of having him as your play caller and having his offense be in your program. Like if Iowa is down 14-3 to Michigan on the road, are they sniffing a comeback? I don't think so. Or if you're down double digits to Wisconsin at halftime, a team that really isn't that good on offense is a team like Iowa, and I'm cherry-picking Iowa, but are some classic Big Ten teams where it's defense and we're going to run the ball. Like, do they have what you need to come back from double digits against some of these Big Ten teams? Probably not. Never say never, of course, but when you're USC and you have Lincoln Riley, you can afford to play that bad first half, and then you know the points are coming. And, again, it's not really a sustainable model, but early in the year, before the season started, the whole conversation was, well, is the Big Ten ready for Lincoln Riley, or is Lincoln Riley ready for the Big Ten? And I think through 2 games, yes, USC lost to Michigan, and that was a disappointing result, but that could have been a blowout if that's not a Lincoln Riley coach team. The offensive line wasn't very good in that game, and they still overcame that, put up enough points to make that a competitive game. They probably should have won that one, and then we all saw what happened yesterday. And I think if you have a different coach, you're a different Big Ten program, you start slow, you're probably not able to put yourself in a position to come back. And people will say, well, USC shouldn't have been in that position to start. I understand it, but it is nice when you're not at your best to have a coach who is so good on offense where you can come back. And so far through these 2 Big Ten games, I think the Big Ten's having a tougher time with Lincoln Riley than Lincoln Riley is with the Big Ten. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and you could be on the other side. Wisconsin playing about as well as it could in the first half, and Phil Longo's offense comes out, and that was just uninspiring. They only muster 82 yards in the second half. I think they only had 3 first downs in the second half because USC's defense came out swarming again in the second half. And I know that former Wisconsin players, Braylon Allen from the Jets, is just tweeting out things that he's unhappy with in terms of the Phil Longo offense. So, like, that's the alternative for some of these Big Ten teams. Purdue has already fired Graham Harrell at offensive coordinator in the Big Ten. So the alternative is you could have someone getting fired already in week 5, or you could put up 83 yards in the second half. I do think there are parts of Lincoln Riley's offense that right now aren't working perfectly, but I think you saw him adapt as well because he's not a guy that likes to call the balls that get thrown up to the big receivers, and you hope that they come down with it. USC didn't get one to Zachariah Branch in the first half, and it turned into an interception. But when nothing else was working, he allowed Miller Moss to throw the fade to Jacoby Lane. That worked. They throw one later down the left sideline to Deuce Robinson. So I think there's been some adaptation from the Lincoln Riley offense, and even though they're not clicking quite yet like they have in the past 2 years, they're still managing to be up at the top of the Big Ten in points per game, passing yards per game, and Miller Moss is a really big part of that. But the offense, I think, is found a way to still put up points and look pretty good when we know they have not reached their potential yet from what we've seen the last 2 years with Lincoln Riley's offense.
Yeah, and a little quick thing on Iowa. They had a bye this last week, but the week before, they beat Minnesota 31-14. They were down like 14-7, and you're just like, okay, this is over. They actually scored a bunch of points, but it was mostly running the ball. They had their I forget their running back's name, but he's like really good. He's one of the best backs, if not the best back in the conference. So they've actually scored a little bit, but it's doing it on the ground, So, but would it have been 21-10, are you going to press a little bit or whatever? I mean, the one thing I was impressed with Michigan, even when they were 4 minutes left and now you're down, no way you're going to score unless you throw a ball or somehow break a big run. They still ran and they broke the big run, which is just unbelievable. Normally you have to throw in those situations.
That's very Big Ten right there.
It was very Big Ten.
Gary Danielson, on the rewatch, I'm sure you guys caught it, the color guy for CBS, he was calling for Davis Warren to come into the game because he felt like they needed to throw it.
Yeah.
And to Michigan's credit, they stuck with what they were doing, the game plan, and it ended up working. But, yeah, that was a crazy situation there. And just defensively, to me, this whole season, we kind of knew there would be some growing pains with the offense and the offensive line. I thought it was better against Wisconsin, but that's really an issue, I think, going forward against the better teams. But defensively, you're going to just be in just about every game, in my opinion, because you have Danton Lynn and you have a lot of that talent. And my big question coming into the year was, we know what Lynn did at UCLA last year. USC's schedule was a little bit harder than what UCLA had to face last year. Can Lynn orchestrate this turnaround in his first year at a new school? Again, I was sort of skeptical of that, and through 4 games, unquestionably, it's yes. So that's great news for USC fans. The offense doesn't really need to be perfect right now because you have a defense that's going to keep you in every game, in my opinion.
And I would argue that there might not be a more battle-tested team through 5 weeks in the country than USC because of the front-loaded schedule and playing two ranked teams in LSU and Michigan. They've only played 2 home games in the first 5 weeks of the year. Whereas you look at some of these other schools, Michigan plays all of its games at home, and then they got to go on the road later in the year. You saw what happened with Ole Miss, a team that played absolutely nobody in the first 4 weeks of the year. Then they have their first real test. They host Kentucky, and they lose. I think if you're a USC fan, yes, maybe the Trojans haven't blown everybody out, and they haven't really outside of Utah State. But I think you have to feel pretty good about the fact that this team has faced adversity early on in the season. They've learned different ways to win. One a shutout, one on the road with a late comeback. They've seen that even with a late comeback, they fell in a tough game to Michigan, and that probably proves to them going forward that they need to clean up some mistakes. And then they come back and they win at home this week against Wisconsin, and they really play a flawless second half. So I think if you're looking at what team in the country has maybe learned the most from the early part of the year, had the most battle testing, facing good opponents, you probably look to USC and a team that's played neutral site, road, home, and played close games and found different ways to win.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple teams that have played some big-time opponents, and there's other teams, like we saw Ohio State really not play anybody, and then they just truck Michigan State pretty badly. But, Alabama, with Kalen DeBoer, USC fans familiar, coming from Washington, he went to Wisconsin. They played at Wisconsin. They just played Georgia and got a big win there, even though they blew a big lead and then came back. And that was a crazy game.
Great game.
Got home. That was one of the benefits of getting home early, is being able to watch. I was going to start watching the other Big Ten games, but it was like, I got to watch the end of this one. This is crazy. So I think that helps. I think it probably helped Alabama that they went to Camp Randall and played a game. Georgia played, Clemson. So I think it's good for USC. They've played a couple, and obviously you'd love to be 4-0, but being 3-1, knowing that you could have won that one, and it was against a ranked team in 10,000 person stadium, I think you can feel pretty good, and knowing that it's an expanded playoff now, and there's games that you could lose. You could have lost the Wisconsin game. I don't think Wisconsin's that good, but you could still lose it. They're going to be tough and could push you around a little bit. You can go into Minnesota and lose that one too. But there's a lot of winnable games too. If you play your game and maybe a little more than a half, USC played one half 2 weeks in a row and ends up 1-1, but you play a little more than half a game, you're probably going to be able to get wins against Maryland and Minnesota. I think you're just a better team than those guys. So there's good opportunities here for USC to build on. And like Jack said, having that kind of schedule and facing some adversity, facing halftime deficit, and being able to come back twice. They took the lead against Michigan. They ended up, not holding it, but took the lead against Wisconsin and held that one. I think that's going to help going forward, because there's going to be some times where you have a bad quarter or whatever and you're behind a little bit. But I think getting off to a good start in a lot of these games is going to pay a lot of dividends.
I do think if they had lost to Wisconsin at home as a double-digit favorite, then would be sitting here today.
Completely different, yes.
Reevaluating everything because, again, to what I said earlier, Wisconsin, to their credit, probably would have made more plays, of course, but USC would have beaten themselves. That's a Wisconsin team that, outside of one receiver, they really don't have any explosive players on that offense. The offensive line is pretty solid. Backup quarterback. Defensively, who do they have that's a real standout NFL draft kind of guy? There's really no one there. So it was really reassuring to see USC win that second half 28-0. And even though I was on the wrong side of the spread and we were going back and forth, Ryan, in the press box, that freaking pick six deflects perfectly off of Jacoby Covington's shoulder. That's okay. That's fine. Good play for USC there. It was reassuring to see them dominate that second half, and I think that has to give you confidence going forward.
Yeah, and props to Jacoby Covington, because I think the ball hit off of his face mask or his shoulder or whatever. That's a pick he could have had. Even though he didn't get it and a DB doesn't have a pick for them this year, he ran down the sideline and he got 2 big blocks. And I think that tells you, there's just these little plays that USC's had this year. Woody Marks going to steal the ball away from Kenneth Grant. Where it's I'm not sure that teams that aren't together do something like that. Yep. I'm not sure a corner sprints down the field for 20 yards after a ball just hit him in the face to make sure that his linebacker gets a pick six at some other programs that maybe aren't moving in the right direction. So there are signs, I think, from this year that this USC team was being truthful when it said that the culture was improved and that everybody liked each other. And I think, back to your point on Will Pauling, Connor, one thing that USC couldn't do under Alex Grinch, at least defensively, was stop the guy that they knew was there to beat him. Think about Dalton Kincaid going for, 250 yards in Utah. Sione Vaki came in, and you knew they were going to go to him because he was explosive. Every time USC would face the guy on an offense, that guy would still have a great game. If you were to single one player in this Wisconsin offense, it was Will Pauling. I think he had 2 catches for 10 yards. They would go after him, and USC would be there to make the hit or to knock the ball away, or the coverage would be good. I think that is what Danton Lynn has proved this year, too, that USC's been able to take away the guy for the most part. And at the end, if it's a close play and the guy beats you, like what happened with Kalel Mullings at Michigan, you can live with that. But USC has done, I think, a pretty good job of limiting the number one option for a lot of these teams.
I think Alex Orji, I don't know what his rushing totals were for yesterday. I don't know if you guys have seen. I'll take a look.
I'll look.
But yeah, I mean, you knew that he wasn't going to be able to be a super effective passer, right? Thrower of the football. Now, running backs did well, and they broke those 3 big plays, with half their yards came on 3 plays. But you thought if Michigan was going to be successful, it would be like Alex Orji on 3rd and 6. Oh, he takes off for 25. Like, that didn't happen. We didn't see anything like that. And that's, I think, a testament to what their game plan was. I think they did take some risks with what they were trying to do, stopping the run game. And then, a couple of them got through, and then you end up making big plays. But what was his, how did he do rushing yesterday?
So he was actually only 9 carries for 12 yards. And through the air, he career high. 10 completions and 86 yards. Both of those are career highs. Wow. With 1 touchdown and 1 interception, he averaged 4.8 yards per pass. So I don't know if he had that first ever 5+ yard completion down the field because he didn't have one after the USC game. But Minnesota did a pretty good job bottling him up on the ground too. Yeah. And who knows, he could just not be good either.
Yeah, he might not be good. But they had a lead early, and I think that was like Michigan kind of sitting on it from what I was seeing, and then Minnesota came back. So the fact that Minnesota came back, I think that shows you something. It was on the road. This is a feisty team, and USC's, I don't think, like you said, you can't start off slow and expect that just everything to go your way. So that's one of those ones you want to get out to a big lead and keep putting up points and just put your foot on their neck and just be done with it. Like, okay, just win a game kind of going away and not like, oh my God, what's going on? You want more of the Utah State field than the Wisconsin field down 21-10 and everyone's scratching their head at halftime.
Yeah, but then we got the Utah State field at the end after that pick 6. I feel like they did win going away.
Yeah.
Jacoby Lane took that big step that I think we've all been looking for him to take against Wisconsin, which was really cool to see too. And I wrote, has USC found their number 1 receiver? And most people are like, yes, we're so excited. And then some people are like, they don't need a number 1 receiver. It's so important to spread the ball around. Why does the media not care about winning football? They're all about me. And I get people saying that. But I also think like having that number 1 option, the guy you can rely on when it's 3rd and 6 and you run it twice on 1st and goal, 2nd and goal, 3rd and goal from the 6-yard line, you need to get a touchdown. Throwing a fade route to him, like having that in your back pocket is so important because when stuff doesn't work, you just need your really good players to execute, and it looks like Jacoby Lane and that call by Riley, Jack, you mentioned it earlier, they're more comfortable calling it because he has been so effective with that. I think his breakout in this game, that could be something that going forward we're talking about, like, okay, remember that Wisconsin game? That's when you really understood that Jacoby Lane, he was your alpha dog. He was your top guy. What happened when Miller Moss threw a jump ball to Zachariah Branch, a smaller receiver? It got picked off. Lake McCree, who was USC's leading receiver, he's out for a few weeks. Jacoby Lane, there's a window here for him to take a big step forward. He did against Wisconsin, and I think we could be talking about him as the weeks go on as USC's alpha dog, and it's important to have that. And that's not me saying, USC, I want him to go to Jacoby Lane because he's the number 1 and it's all about him. No, when you need to execute, game on the line, you just want your best player to do what he's got to do, and I think that might be Lane after this week.
It could be, and USC's had some drops. I think,
and he had one too. But besides that, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, spreading around is good, but you do want to feel somewhat comfortable. It was funny. One of the weirdest plays of the game. Kyron Hudson had another one-handed catch, but then there was a play. I think it was called dead for a false start or something, and Miller still threw it, and it was the most casual one-handed snag.
Yeah.
That was like not counting. It was just like, oh, okay, whatever. He just like put it. It was like. It was sort of like, what's going on? Boom, I caught the ball. And we're like, that was the most casual one-handed snag I've ever seen on the field. It was like crazy. But you want to feel confident in some of those guys. And, that one of the drives that stalled where I think they had to, I don't know if it was a field goal or it was one of the other ones. Like there was a drop like on 3rd down. And,
and they punted. That was, I think, Jay Fair.
Yeah. So you just want to feel confident in some of those guys. And if you have someone that hey, I can just huck this ball up and they're going to get it. And it's cool. Like, I think they paid a little more attention to him, and Deuce Robinson had that drive, and that touchdown pass over the middle was really pretty. We got a great shot of that one too. But yes, I think it's not about, you just want some number one guy. A lot of people wanted Zachariah Branch to be that guy. I mean, I think he can have a monster game where he's got 50 yards rushing and 150 yards receiving and stuff like that, and a big punt return. He can have those potential games too. But it's good to have a bunch of guys that have that potential. But if you feel Jacoby Lane's that dude, and when it's crunch time, you can throw it up to him. It's a nice thing to have.
Yeah, and I think you saw against Michigan, Zachariah Branch had a career day. I think he was 6 catches, over 80 yards. This week he has nearly 60 yards of total offense in terms of receiving and rushing. If Jacoby Lane's going to go out there and throw up on a 100-yard game, and now Minnesota's like, well, shoot, maybe we have to double Jacoby Lane. We don't have a DB big enough to cover him. Well, now Deuce Robinson's on the other side. We don't have a DB big enough to cover him on that side. Well, now we've committed to both sides, and Zachariah Branch is open over the middle. And then when Mekhi Lemon comes back, what are these defenses going to do? That's what this quartet of sophomore receivers was supposed to do. It's not supposed to be you only go to one and you just forget about the other 3. But I think everyone came into the season in the Big Ten and across the country kind of thinking Zachariah Branch was the number one guy. He gets the most press. He's the fastest rated in NCAA, and so everyone talks about him. And so I think teams focused on him pretty early on, and that opened up a lane for Jacoby Lane and for Deuce Robinson. They've capitalized a bit in the last couple of weeks, and now I think that probably opens up some stuff for Zachariah Branch, who I feel like fans are being pretty hard on. I know he hasn't been a big game changer on special teams, and that was a pretty bad muff play, and he hasn't been himself, it seems like, in the return game, but I really do think he's coming along as a wide receiver, and if teams were focusing on him earlier and now they're going to lay back, I really think that the combination of him and Lane is maybe your top 2 guys. They'll help each other out, and I think that'll be really big for USC.
You see Ryan Williams for Alabama have this huge game, and then I look at our board, and it's like, oh, this is what I thought Zachariah Branch was going to be. It's like, can you give me a freaking break? Not every 5-star guy is this all-world talent right away. And, Jack, to your point, the Michigan game, I felt like Branch had a really good game. He had a couple of drops. Pro Football Focus didn't grade him as drops, but maybe balls that he could have caught later in that one. But without him, they are screwed. They don't get that field goal early on because he broke free on that great scramble from Moss, and that set up the field goal. And then in the second half, he set up a lot of touchdowns as well. Remember, right after the muff, USC went right back to him against Wisconsin, and he picked up a big gainer. Is he this all-world, surefire first-round pick as a receiver right now? No, but that's okay. And I think people just have way too high expectations for some of these guys. I mean, look at Miller Moss. He's waited his turn. It's taken a long time for him to get to where he is, and he was a really highly ranked recruit, not as high as Branch, but in the similar mold. I believe he was a top 100 guy. Sometimes it just takes time, and in this era of now, you need everything to happen immediately. He didn't play a ton last year. There were other receivers in front of him. He played more than other freshmen, but this is a new role for him, and the muff was bad. I'm not trying to say that was a good play or anything, but him as a receiver, I think there's been a lot more good than bad, and I agree with you, Jack. I don't understand why people are all over him. Just because you had these massively high expectations for him, that's a you problem. That's not a Zachariah Branch problem.
And you can't expect every receiver to be perfect at everything. The thing that makes Zachariah Branch good is he's twitchy, he's athletic, he's so fast, you won't catch up to him. If you get the ball in his hands, he's going to be great. That doesn't mean he has to catch every ball over the middle on 3rd down in between 2 defenders when he's getting hit. That's what Jacoby Lane's good at. That's what Deuce Robinson's good at. You wouldn't expect, every running back that's, 5'11" and 165 pounds to be able to truck like Derrick Henry. But then again, you wouldn't expect Derrick Henry to put a guy in a spin cycle like a smaller, more elusive back. So I think you just have to have realistic expectations, too, for just the build of some of these players. And if you look at the 4 sophomore receivers when they're all healthy, the cool thing is, and I think the thing that USC fans should be excited about, one of them has each of those abilities, so they complement each other well. And it doesn't mean that all 4 of them are going to be able to do the same thing as everybody else and do all of the things that make each one of them individually good.
Derrick Henry's killing it for his fantasy team tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
There you go. Longest rush in Ravens history, I read.
Yeah, that was cool. And we're off topic here, but the Bills called one of the dumbest plays I've ever heard. I've ever seen. They just got Josh Allen killed. It resulted in a turnover. If you're watching that and listening to us, thank you. But I was dumbfounded watching that play.
All right, we've got a couple of questions. We can get to those and then get out of here. If you want to put them in there, we can answer them before we head out for tonight.
Yeah, shout out to the Facebook people, too, if you're watching on Facebook. Thank you.
You guys are the best. Jasper Smith on YouTube says, any news on Eric Gentry? We did see him go down with an injury late.
No, Riley was asked about him. No update. Based on some things behind the scenes, we'll see if he plays against Minnesota. I do think he'll be back this year, which is good, but this is now twice he's dealt with an injury this season. You feel for him.
All right, Randy says, what are your expectations for the offensive line going forward?
Expect to get better. They got to figure something out. I mean, this is, you got players. There's guys that have talent around there. You have to figure out a way to make it work. What they ended up doing in this game is shifting the right guard and taking turns there. I think Alani Noah ended up playing a lot more snaps. I think he was on longer drives, but maybe that's part of the reason why, because he was out there. But you can't have Miller Moss running for his life. It's great that he's been under some duress and showed a lot of poise in the pocket, but their short yardage running against Power 4 teams has not been good. In running situations, they've just not been getting much push. And, of course, Miller Moss, protection was okay, not great. Protection was obviously horrible against Michigan. So you have to get better there. You can't let that, you have too many talented people around there to not have a somewhat effective offensive line. And I don't think it's been that way yet. So it's something they have to get better at.
I hope you're right. The way I see it, though, Ryan, I just feel like they're limited, and you just have to overcome that. They're not perfect. Against Wisconsin, the pass protection was better. They're good enough to still have USC win a lot of games, and they can overcome some of the obvious mistakes from that point of view. But your two tackles, I don't know if this year, those guys are going to ever be able to stop a really, really good edge rusher consistently. So that's on Lincoln Riley, going to have to scheme around those guys. I just don't know what the ceiling is for this group, because I think the tackle depth, it's been something we've talked about all offseason. We kind of knew this was going to be a problem. Here it is. They're playing well enough to win, like we saw against Wisconsin, but I can't get that Michigan game out of my head, and I want to see what it looks like against Penn State, because I feel like they're pretty similar to Michigan in the sense that they can make some adjustments and really hurt USC there. So we'll have to see what that looks like. But I just don't know if they're capable of taking these big strides. Hope I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I think you just try and avoid your floor at that point. Just make sure you're playing as a group of 5 offensive linemen, not 5 guys freestyling like Lincoln Riley said they did against Michigan. And I think you saw, Elijah Page make a mistake on the sack fumble. He came in to block, and him and Emmanuel Prignon blocked the same guy, and someone came around the edge. So if they just communicate, they don't have to be the most talented and ready and great experienced offensive line in the world, as long as they communicate and make sure they're all doing the same thing and not freestyling.
Yeah, that should be fixable.
Yes.
If you get blown away by the guy, maybe that's not fixable. But if you just don't block the dude, then that should be fixable.
So it'll be a big job for Josh Henson, and we'll see how that goes the rest of the year. Lisa on YouTube says, why can't they adjust in the second quarter instead of waiting till the second half? I think that's Lincoln Riley would love the answer to that question.
Well, he said that
he made a joke.
Yeah, it's not that easy or something like that. I wish it was that simple, something like that.
Well, and he said, I had a great halftime speech.
That was pretty funny
tongue in cheek. So I guess the answer there would be he doesn't have a halftime speech after the first quarter. No, it's a great question. I think it comes down to just that first drive for USC is usually pretty good because it's offensive drive. It's scripted. We saw them score a touchdown against Wisconsin. I mean, Michigan, it wasn't as good, but usually that first one is good. And then for whatever reason, these past couple of weeks, it's gotten away from them a little bit. So I wonder if sometimes maybe USC is a little bit surprised at the opposition. That kind of comes to mind, especially against Michigan. It certainly looked like the offensive line was surprised. It's one thing to watch film, and then you go out and try to replicate it on the scout team. It's another thing to actually go up against those guys you watched on film. So that's come to my mind a little bit, and then they adjust and just sort of settle in. But I don't really know. It's a good question.
I think starting at the 1-yard line each of the last 2 games doesn't help either. Yeah. I mean, Michigan, you have to start in the big house, and you're psyching yourself up all week. We've got these scripted plays for when we start at the 25, and it's going to be great.
So fast.
We're at the 1?
Yeah.
And then this week, the punt goes 74 yards rolling on the ground, and it doesn't really matter what you had game planned for that drive. At some point, you have to just avoid a safety, and something like that can really throw off an entire half of football. USC did move the ball pretty well in the first half, just the turnovers. But Super OC Holmes asks yes or no question on YouTube, are there quicker adjustments with tablets on the sidelines?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
there are. I think that feedback we've got has all been positive. You can figure stuff out more than what they were doing before.
It's why there are fewer coaches in the booth now, and then they don't have to relay that down to the sideline. It's all in real time, all on the sideline. I'm sure it was really fast before, but it seems even quicker now.
Yeah. Andrew on YouTube says, do you guys think we, and to a lesser extent himself, put too much pressure on Zachariah Branch? Feel like when he does get a chance, he needs to do something explosive and is missing it with his mind. I think we kind of touched on that.
I think so, yeah. But I do think he's been good. Like, there are some people where you have these world of expectations on him, and then they, like, stink and don't do anything. And this, with Zachariah Branch, I feel like the reaction from fans, it's as if he hasn't done anything. And he was USC's leading receiver against Michigan. He had the big punt return to set up a touchdown against LSU. Would have been a touchdown, or maybe kick return, if the kicker didn't get to him. Like, he is doing a lot of really good things. It might not just be at the level people are expecting. So, to me, I think that probably is true. The question, like, are the expectations too high for him? And, yeah, I mean, I'm sure after letting up that 74-yard punt, the coaching staff was probably like, yeah, hey, don't do that. And then they punted again, and he felt like he needed to make a play. So I don't know if I blame the coaches. It's more on him. He can't muff that. But that wasn't expectations. That was just the coaching staff saying, hey, you kind of screwed that up. Don't do that again. And then he sort of got in his own head there. So I just want to see what happens as the season goes on, because I still feel like he can have a pretty good season, even if it isn't that 5-star, like 1,000-yard receiver, 10-touchdown guy. He can still be really solid.
Yeah, I think there was some pressure there because there was talk. I mean, special teams were good against Michigan, except for there were some kicks they could have returned. And so there was talk about, hey, we need to be able to, like, if there's no one around, take off and run. That first punt is a really weird one. We were kind of debating in the press box, was there anything he could have done to stop it?
You have to block it.
It was almost like let it bounce off your chest or something.
It would just ricochet off of you. You got to block a low kick like that.
So I think it was a little unlucky, and then you're probably pressing to go catch a pass at the sideline that you shouldn't catch because you didn't really get to make a play. They were both sort of weird ones, and props to Wisconsin, and they were able to kind of put them in some uncomfortable positions, and the second one really burned them, and it led to a touchdown. So I feel like there was some pressure there. Like, he was trying to make a play, and there was talk about, hey, you need to make a play, and so I think settled down after that. But that was a couple tough ones for him.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure he touched the second punt either. It was really close. I think Jalen Smith thought he touched it until then Jalen Smith jumped on the football, and then that turned into bouncing into Wisconsin players' hands. But
I think it hit his right foot, but it was close.
Yeah. And also, some of these punters are good. You saw Eddie Czaplisky kick a really weird spinning punt that bounced off of Vinny Anthony for Wisconsin. So these punters are getting kind of advanced. Hot Since 91 says, Minnesota is number 5 in total defense right now. Are we underestimating them?
I mean, we said they're going to be good. Like, they are a very good defensive team. Michigan scored some points early. Iowa scored on them. They ran the ball on them. I think they have a better pass defense than run defense. I'm going to dig in a little bit more. But, yeah, this is going to be a road game. They're going to be fired up for this one, licking their wounds after this Michigan loss that they felt they could have won. Very similar to USC. They were in the big house. They thought they could have won that one. So, yeah, I think you're going to get Minnesota's best shot, and you got to play well. Don't start off slow. But I think USC's offense has the potency to do stuff that maybe some of the other offenses Minnesota's played can't. And then USC's defense, I think that's traveled. They've played well outside of a few plays. So, yeah, I think I don't want to underestimate them, but it's certainly a good defensive team that if you don't play a decent enough game, they're going to put you in some bad spots.
It's really hard to win on the road, of course, especially in conference play. To me, this is a week where I don't want to say are you in the college football playoff or not, depending on what happens, but it could go south for sure. If you play like you did against Wisconsin and you're in a hostile environment, I don't think you're able to come back from a deficit like you were against Wisconsin. Now, they could play a lot better and have a good game, and then you come back and you say, hey, they won on the road. Minnesota, yes, they're limited, but to the question there, the emailer, the defense is really good, and it's going to be a really challenging game. So if you go out and you win, you cover that 9.5-point spread, I'll feel really, really good about this team. But it's certainly a game based on what we saw against Wisconsin, based on what we saw against Michigan, where it could go the other way. And that's what's so fun about the season. The team is a hell of a lot better than I expected at the beginning of the year. Now it's all about, are you just a really good team, or are you potentially a great team? And I think we'll get more answers to that against Minnesota.
Yeah, it's a business trip. You got to take care of business against a team that can beat you, but you win, and then you're like, okay, now you're 2-1 in the conference, and you have Penn State coming to the Coliseum, and it's a home game, and it's going to be crazy, and that's a winnable game. But you have to show up every week, and that's on the coaching staffs get paid a lot of money to make sure that their team can show up every week, because the team's going to look very different week to week. It's just college football. That's the way it is. But you got to figure out the formula, whatever it is, to get this team ready to play. They were ready in the second half, not in the first against Wisconsin. Get them ready, get them, play well, get a good road win, and then come home, and it's going to be one of the bigger games in the country, I think, with USC playing Penn State. It might be is that the Oregon?
That's Oregon, Ohio State. That's like the week of the year.
Yeah, that's like a crazy week. But you want
it's honestly good for USC.
No, it's a good thing. You want to. These are tough. We knew these are going to be tough wins, but all winnable, certainly winnable. So just go out, play your game, and you can beat Minnesota.
And I think USC fans probably have to adjust to understanding that these games in conference are going to be closer. I just feel like overall, in general, the Big Ten plays closer games than the Pac-12 used to, which means that there are more upsets where a home team that's maybe not as good beats the team that's coming in on the road that's a little bit better. So I'm not saying that's going to happen this week, but I just feel like the vibe that I've gotten from the Big Ten so far, that seems to be the case in the conference. Do you guys have any thoughts, any other thoughts before we wrap it up? That's all the time we've got for these questions.
I appreciate everyone coming in and joining the chat. I want to thank Kamari Ramsey for coming on. Second time we've had him on Tunnel Vision, so great kid. I know the lights went out there a little bit where he was, but his phone was buzzing some. But it's great to get a perspective, especially after a game. I like just kind of hearing from them a little bit more. He answered 2 questions or something on the podium, so just to be able to chat with them, I think was a lot of fun to kind of get a feel for what's going on. Hopefully, it's beneficial for all you guys to do that. So no one's else able to do that. So thanks to House of Victory for setting all this stuff up with them. But yeah, I think it's a good win. I think USC's in a good place. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves. Just go get the win against Minnesota, and man, there's going to be a lot of attention if Penn State's able to stay undefeated and come in to the Coliseum. That's going to be a really big one. That Michigan game was a big one. That Penn State coming to the Coliseum is going to be a real big one.
I would agree. Connor, any thoughts?
I'm with you. I think that Penn State game is huge, and that was the reason why I didn't say the Minnesota game will determine your fate. No individual game determines your fate. These next 2 are huge, and after these next 2 games, then we'll have a clearer picture of, okay, where exactly does USC stand and what exactly does the ceiling of this team look like? How good can they be? You get a team that I don't want to say is average. I feel like Minnesota, they're limited, but they could definitely beat you. You play them on the road, a game that's going to kick off closer to the evening over there in Central Time. I think, what is it, 4:30?
I think it's a 6:30 kick there, so 4:30 here.
Yeah, so pretty much a night game there. That building's going to be rocking, and then you turn around the next week and you play a good Penn State team who offensively hasn't been fantastic this year, but defensively has been pretty solid outside of that Bowling Green game there. So we're going to learn a lot about this team in the next 2 weeks. They put themselves in a position to succeed. That Michigan game still stings, but I would have taken 3-1 at this point at the beginning of the year for sure. And I think it's all in front of them, so it's very exciting.
And I think I said this at the beginning of the season, and it changed a little bit after beating LSU, but the more defining aspect of this season was how do you play at Minnesota? How do you play at Maryland? Rutgers at home, Wisconsin, all winnable games. You're better, you're more talented than those teams, but if you're losing a couple of those, that sets you up for a different type of season. But if you're winning those games, then the big ones just become, are you making the playoffs or not? So I think it's a defining game because you have to win these ones. And then maybe you lose to Michigan and then Penn State and Notre Dame and you just fall short of the playoff. But you beat the teams you should have beat, and then you're sort of in that playoff discussion. But you got to win those games, and that sort of puts you into the, hey, we're a potential playoff team if you're Lincoln Riley and USC. So it's a big one. If you were going to be 11-1 versus, you got to win the Penn States and the Notre Dames and all that stuff. But if you want to be a playoff caliber team, it's these other games you have to win, like Wisconsin, now Minnesota. When you go to Maryland, Rutgers comes to the Coliseum, things like that.
Yeah, the upper echelon teams over the last decade or so in the Big Ten, when you're talking about Ohio State, Michigan, and to a lesser extent Penn State, even when some other good teams pop up in the conference, like they handle business, and that means that their season is defined by the 2 games that they play against each other. And that's what USC, that's the kind of company USC is trying to break into. And so you can't, obviously you can't underplay a game like this, but you just have to go out and handle business, and we'll see if USC can do it. But one of the beauties of this 12-team college football playoff is you handle your business in these kind of games, and you can afford a close loss in those big, tough games like USC had to Michigan. And I still believe that if they handle business in all the games that they should win, and they split Penn State and Notre Dame, that USC will go to the playoff.
Yeah, 100% agree.
We'll see if they can do it. They did handle business in the second half this week against Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much for joining the show. We just put it on the screen, but if you're still here, please leave a like, consider subscribing, leave a comment down below, and send it to a friend if you want to hear them. Listen from Kamari Ramsey, hear the recap of the game, but USC wins 38-21 at Wisconsin. We'll be back on Thursday with Tunnel Vision as we preview the Minnesota game after going to a couple of days of practice this upcoming week, and then eventually come back and recap that one when we come back from Minneapolis. But USC travels next week. But thank you guys so much for joining us on Tunnel Vision tonight. For Ryan Abraham and Connor Morrissette, I'm Jack Smith. We'll see you next time on Tunnel Vision.